I'm Steph White. I'm a 41-year-old lady and I live local to here in Oxfordshire. So endometriosis has had quite a dire effect on my life over the last number of years. I had a fairly recent diagnosis, but looking back, the symptoms have affected my life for many, many years. That could be anything from being housebound, affecting my personal life, affecting my professional life at work, not being able to perform in my current role, increased sickness rates. For maybe half the month, I was pretty housebound for some of it, choosing daily what kind of pain relief to take, living off either prescribed pain relief or those that you can buy in your local supermarkets, and then deciding on how I'm going to live the day. What diet I had affected my symptoms as well. If I ate something quite fatty and heavy, I definitely suffer with that. A lot of abdominal pain, changes in my bowel habits, sleeping pattern, my fatigue was really high, and I'd go on a short run and feel like I've done something much further. I feel tired very quickly after doing exercise, and even weight loss was incredibly difficult. No matter what plan you followed or what diet you followed or had a personal trainer, I was never able to kind of shift that abdominal kind of weight that endometriosis caused me. So just over a year ago, in November 2024, I suffered with a sudden rectal bleed. It came out of nowhere, came on quite suddenly and lasted several hours, to the point where I got quite worried. So I took myself off to our local hospital. They did various tests and examinations and diagnosed me with a bacterial infection, which I thought was a bit odd to begin with. 10 days later, I was still suffering with quite a lot of abdominal pain, so I went back to my GP and they just told me it was because of the abdominal pain and that, because I've had this bacterial infection, that it was just sore. So I waited, the symptoms got worse, there were a number of bleeds, changes to my cycle, changes to my sleeping and everything. So, and then at work one evening, I nearly passed out because of the pain. So I went back to my GP, who sent me back to our local hospital. Whilst at that hospital, it was then that I was told, pretty much without any kind of surgical intervention, that I had endometriosis because I had a large endometrioma in one of my ovaries. They then told me there was potentially, I needed a further scan, and that would be anything up to 3 months. And then beyond that, I would need to be seen in a clinic. And that waiting clinic on the National Health Service in my area could be anything up to 6 to 9 months. Now, as someone who's a 40-year-old lady, waiting 6 to 9 months was insane. So I did some local research, and initially I found an amazing consultant here at the Manor. The first consultant I met was a gentleman called Mr. Soleimani. Sadly, my endometriosis was far too advanced for him to deal with, hence why he put me in contact with another specialist. My first appointment with him was quite eye-opening. I felt validated, I felt listened to, I felt like he understood me as a person, as a human. I felt that he just listened to me and my personal story and my personal needs, and he took them into consideration before we decided on a treatment plan. Although my treatment plan was quite limited with how severe my endometriosis now was and how it's affecting my life, I was incredibly fortunate that there was an appointment within about 2 weeks of meeting Miss Baker and Mr. Arambaji, that I was fortunate enough to be scheduled for surgery. So things happened quite quickly. Otherwise, there would have been about maybe, because of the festive period, there probably would have been a new year. But even then, that's much shorter. But both of them listened to me, they understood me, they validated my needs, they kind of just made me feel like this wasn't all in my head. And then the day of my surgery, which was in November, I was quite nervous in the morning, but I tried not to kind of let it through. And then the morning I arrived from meeting the reception staff, the administration staff, everyone made me feel very relaxed and welcoming. I was taken up to my room where I met the ward staff initially, and then I met the kind of pre-operation nurse from the critical care unit who came in and said that she'd be looking after me when I came back from the surgery. And then I met the consultants all that morning, so I met both the colorectal and the gynae surgeon, and I also met the anaesthetist. They all came in to see me to check that they were happy with what the surgery was going to entail, which we'd previously discussed at our appointment, how extensive the surgery was. They made me feel quite relaxed, and then I literally walked from my room down the corridor to the theatres, and then the next thing I know, I'm waking up in recovery. And the recovery team, the nurses there were lovely. I could name them all, but I won't single them out because I'm sure they're all equally lovely. But the team were very dignified. I'm a healthcare professional by profession as well, so they just treat you with dignity, with respect, and they knew exactly what you were there for. It wasn't a case they needed to go and refer to notes. They knew exactly why you were here and what your needs were particularly. You know, I had lots of drains and catheters and IVs and everything in, so they were really tentative, very kind, very caring, and obviously when you're kind of stuck in a bed, they were really dignified with anything that I needed at the time. And then my move through the kind of high dependency critical care unit was a journey. Had some reactions to some of the drugs, but again, the consultants and the staff were amazing. They were very reactive to whatever was going on and treated it as best as they could to my individual needs, what was working and what wasn't. And then when I finally moved out of there, moved into my ward, again, the nurses on there were so lovely. They knew exactly why I was here. They treated me like a person, like a human. They felt like they gave me the time. It wasn't rushed. Everything they had was very about you, is what I found with a lot of the kind of healthcare staff here. Everything was tailored to you. You weren't, one of 6 people. You were a person, and they needed to take that time with you. And then my recovery down there was, going really well. Even the catering staff were really lovely. The first kind of bit of food I really wanted was some ready salted crisps, and every meal I then got delivered a bag of ready salted crisps, which was amazing. They actually remembered that that's what I wanted to eat. And then every morning they would come and ask what food you wanted, and so with my surgery that was quite tricky. And then moving through, the day of my discharge, the nurse was very efficient, the pharmacy team were really efficient, and then my consultant rang me the next day after I was home just to make sure that I was okay and I was settling in at home and things were going well. At first it felt odd. Obviously I had a lot of surgical pain, but the pain relief I was given was supporting that, and I was very lucky to go and stay with family. And then the consultant's secretary checked in with me as well to make sure things were going really well. And then sort of further down the line, the first thing I noticed is I'm not living with chronic pain anymore. That pain that used to wake up every morning and decide what type of pain relief to take to help me through my day has suddenly gone. And it's very difficult to explain going from having chronic pain every day to now not living with chronic pain and not having a blow. I'm able to eat what I want and don't suffer. It doesn't matter. I don't have to plan things particularly around any cycles because I don't have any gynae system anymore. But it was, my recovery's been amazing, better than I thought it would be, for sure. I'm still quite early. I'm about 9 weeks now post my surgery. In fact, I think it's 9 weeks today post surgery, and mentally and physically I'm a different person. Physically, going back to running is obviously taking a little bit longer, but I just feel a different person. I'm, you know, nearly a stone lighter, and that's through probably what they removed during surgery, and then also the recovery with, you know, building back up a diet and things. But I just, yeah, my life's different now. I haven't got that worry, that kind of what's going to happen if I go on holiday, or am I going to be at work and need to take time off. I haven't got that worry and that stress anymore. Don't allow doctors to squash your symptoms. Don't allow hospitals and other healthcare professionals to say that it's not a validated condition, because it is. Get treated sooner rather than later. Don't end up in a position where it's affected all of your organs and it requires major surgery. I'm incredibly lucky to have come to the Manor. The treatment, the care and the dignity that I've received from this hospital have been second to none. From the moment of arriving to them consultant appointments, the staff were, you know, they were smiling, they were happy, they're very polite, and then all the way through to my discharge and all my follow-ups. The hospital is lovely. The staff have been lovely. The room that I was in was, you know, you get your own room here. Everything's been lovely. I would recommend the Manor Hospital to anyone seeking assistance with their endometriosis. If you want to feel validated, if you want to feel listened to and treated like an individual, then come here, seek out my consultants. They were amazing. They've been amazing. And, you know, most certainly now, I'd come back here for any other further treatment I required.